AI is already transforming pen testing. So if you look at automated reconnaissance and scanning, finding those low-hanging fruits, whether you talk about threat intelligence correlation, they really identify those IOCs well. They do very well fuzzing, exploit generation, reporting, documentation. These are few clicks away now. However, what I do think is manual assessments are going to remain vital. In terms of when you bring in that human touch in pen testing is vital. Number one, we do have contextual understanding when we are pen testing a solution, which AI lacks. Number two is we could get creative in exploitation. AI could have set of rules and it's going to follow that exploitation path, but on runtime, you need the human touch to really make those exploitation creative. AI is on.
Welcome to Season 4 of The Elephant in AppSec, the podcast to explore, challenge, and boldly face the AppSec elephants in the room. I'm Alexandra, your host, AppSec enthusiast, and growth manager at Escape. Today, I'm joined by Jyoti Raval, a security leader with a diverse background across consulting, product security at Qualys and Harness, and now serving as a director of cybersecurity engineering at Baker Hughes. Jyoti is a passionate pentester and international speaker. She is also the author of Phishing Simulation and MPT, Pentest in Action, and has discovered multiple CVEs. Beyond her technical expertise, Jyoti is committed to empowering women in cyber through InfosecGirls and leads the OWASP Pune chapter. In our conversation, we dive deep into the future of pentesting, exploring whether AI can truly replace human expertise or if manual assessments are still essential for context understanding. Jyoti also shares valuable insights on the mindset shift needed when transitioning into security leadership and how to navigate that challenge. If you enjoy this podcast, don't forget to subscribe and follow it on your favorite podcasting app or YouTube. It's the best way to avoid missing future episodes. And with that, get ready to hear Jyoti's opinions. Dive right in!
Hi, Jyoti. I'm super excited to have you on a podcast with me. It's always, a pleasure to have everyone like with so many diverse backgrounds from all over the world sharing their, product security experiences. And I saw you have super interesting background. You come, from a pen test, the product security, both on kind of the vendor side, the practitioner side. So I'm looking forward to learn from your experience and ask some challenging questions. It's going to be in the beginning of the new season. Well, we're trying also to make it a bit more controversial. We succeed. But yeah, I think I've saw a lot of changes recently in the past months within the industry. Like a lot of platformizations, a lot of rebranding, from a lot of security tools. And I think in May, I saw like Burp Suite, which is like everyone uses it for pen testing. They just rebranded from Enterprise Suite to DAS, which is it kind of signals in a way shift that we're going more and more towards automation. And like one of my colleagues talked to their founders as well, and they mentioned, yeah, they truly believe that we're shifting towards the usage of AI, and you on your side, you had a testing career as well, and now you're using those tools. So do you think actually the AI will take over pen testing?
That's a great question, Alexandra. I think, and this is the question which is actively debated in cybersecurity community. So the way I think about it is AI is already transforming pen testing. So if you look at automated reconnaissance and scanning, finding those low-hanging fruits, whether you talk about threat intelligence correlation, they really identify those IOCs well. They do very well fuzzing, exploit generation, reporting, documentation. These are few clicks away now. However, what I do think is manual assessments are going to remain vital. In terms of when you bring in that human touch in pen testing is vital. Number one, we do have contextual understanding when we are pen testing a solution, which AI lacks. Number two is we could get creative in exploitation. AI could have set of rules and it's going to follow that exploitation path. But on runtime, you need the human touch to really make those exploitation creative. And this is the area where human excels. And you have a very nice judgmental call in terms of scope, how much you want to move laterally, right? And the areas like social engineering, of course, we have AI helping in a lot many social engineering attacks, but AI could simulate the aspects, but real world social engineering attacks, it often includes and it involves nuanced human interaction. So these things, I think it's going to be manual still, while AI is going to help us transform how we used to find low-hanging fruits and of course add some additional capabilities to find those exploitations and put into place.
Okay, because you mentioned the understanding the context, which is always related, to business logic vulnerabilities. What types of business logic vulnerabilities will be the hardest for AI to detect?
I think the way AI looks at the product or application is purely based on how one functionality is designed, how series of forms are, for example, designed. However, when it comes to human manual pen test, you know that this functionality goes back and relates to another user login. When you log in, he has the capability to approve similar functionality. And when you're able to bypass, escalate this kind of privileges, and these are the flaws which is still going to be human specific, I feel.
And how do you think security teams should divide the budgets? Quite often for pen testing, well, it's a big budget within the companies, and when I talk with people, they're looking more and more to reduce this part. How would you then maybe adapt the budgets for the pen testing, since right now, on the practitioner side, how would you say, okay, this is the part that can only be tested by pen tester, and this should be the budget, and this is the part that can be tested by tool, and this should be the budget for that? How would you allocate?
So I think we would move more towards a hybrid approach where we would do AI augmented pen testing, but there would be a skill shift in terms of the manual pen test where they would. So recently I was reading a podcast by one of the founder and he put it very nicely that we are going to transform pen tester into AI operators. So they're going to really use the capability that AI brings in, and then understanding how to guide, validate, and interpret those AI driven assessments so we could bring that human touch as well.
Yeah, that's a really, I think, a good thought, and that will potentially represent probably all our jobs as well. That will also be AI operators. It already feels sometimes like that in certain things with the, with prompting, because yeah, if you want to be efficient, you have to use AI quite often. Like you don't have a choice. Like on your side, what do you often use AI in your daily job for?
The way more and more I'm getting closer to AI, I think more and more I'm trying to understand that, of course, it fascinates me most times. I understand is I really need to ask not just a question, but write a set of questions to get most out of that platform. And endpoint could be many, but I think if you know what you want to get out of that AI, that's when it works best.
Yeah, I think it actually defining, like thinking about the prompt that you want to put and setting the goal. It's well, it takes time to iterate actually as well afterwards. Since like, let's say even pen testing is going to be AI assisted, how do you think, like when do you think you should invite, actual external pen testers who assist themselves with AI tools versus building just maybe have a couple to people in-house who know how to use AI for pen test? Like, how would you decide between the two?
I think, Alexandra, I am biased towards
Okay.
building internal capabilities in-house. Having said that, I think we would need external pen test for regulatory or compliance requirements where you need third-party assessors. You need that unbiased external perspective to put into place. Sometimes it is driven from customer requirements where you need third-party pen tester to come and assess. However, internal security capabilities can often utilize when you have ongoing security needs, cost efficiency, faster response time, contextual knowledge about your products and application. If I want to put it short and sweet, internal team handles day-to-day security automation, your secure development lifecycle practices, and external pen tests are brought in periodically for audits, compliance, and as I was mentioning, unbiased perspective.
Were you always biased towards internal pen test?
I think so. I am a firm believer that if you have in-house capability, it really takes you a long way in terms of cultivating your in-house talent and not depending on external pen tester to tell you. And then when you have contextual, as I was mentioning, contextual knowledge about the product, you really bring in a very nice security issues in front of your product teams, which adds a lot of value.
Yeah. I personally totally agree that in-house is always better. From really product understanding perspective, it really, really helps because you're always like know about the features that people communicate on, you know, all the ins and outs most of the time. And you also kind of been quite vocal about like pen testing in action. You know, I think you did some talks at the conferences as well, and like talking about your tool, you know, managing like pen test. I think it's called MPT, pen test in action, right? It was like what. Can you tell a little bit more about the tool and what inspired you to build it?
Right, as you mentioning, Alexandra, initial part of my career, I was a core pen tester, application security enthusiast by heart. And while I was solving that internal pen test problem, I realized that we really need that open source platform. When dealing with large organization who has multiple product lines, who has multiple pen tests running in parallel, you need one source of platform who gives you that single source of truth, how your risk assessment looks like in terms of which is bringing in perspective of pen test, and then understanding where you are in terms of your pen test journey. When is it going to end? Which resource utilize? I mean, how you're going to efficiently utilize your resources. At the same time, you don't want to overrun them. So better planning, understanding, and you know, right, when you go to leadership and you tell them that you're pen testing 10 products, but then at the end of the day, they want to realize and understand where you're standing in terms of your security posture.
Yeah, they just want a high level overview. Yeah.
Yeah, so that is what was in my mind while I was developing that solution, that we need that automation in place which ingests a lot of information and gives you that holistic view of your risk posture. Additionally, lets your engineering developers know what is coming in their queue. At the same time, let your pen tester know what is in queue, transfer that knowledge base, and efficiently plan your resources for your red team managers, let's say.
And how do you efficiently plan your team resources?
So it gives you perspective on how many resources you have, how many pen tests you have in queue, how many resources are already engaged in pen test, and what is that queue in terms of resource allocation and testing looks like. So you could do that correlation in the dashboard and allocate the pen test to a correct resource. So you will you don't want to allocate one resource retest only consistently. So you give them a perspective where they could interact with larger technology stack. So for example, somebody's testing Java technologies tech today in terms of development. Tomorrow you want to move them to, let's say, Go. So they get wider perspective. You have upskilling, cross-skilling, and then you also better prepare that, okay, this resource is going to be free by this time. So you could tell engineering that your product will be pen tested, let's say, by end of this month. So they also could better plan their releases.
Did your perspective on like resource allocation change since you switched from being pentester, to more on the product security side?
The problem that I was trying to solve was multiple.
There are always multiple problems.
And from different people's perspective, right? Because I remember getting asked those questions, why is it taking so much time? Where are we now? And then at the end of 30 days, you giving that problem and report statement, which gives you $20, and then they have to solve. If you could give that faster, it really helps better plan.
Okay, I see. And how do you train other people within the organization to also understand like the impact of like you mentioned, the leadership wanted to see, okay, it was taking too long, so you needed to prove it with metrics. How do you, for example, also cross-functionally show the people the impact and train them on understanding of what you're doing as a pen tester and security?
Bringing in that risk perspective, not just from security perspective, but also how it is impacting business. I think it's always putting risk forward, but in the language that business understands. So not everybody wants to know that there is let's say there is a blind XXE. So what? So
yeah, I think
you might
most of people in the company will not understand what is that.
Yeah. So you might want to speak the language that your business understands, so they better could consume the data that you're trying to provide.
How would you translate, for example, SE into business language?
The way you would say is in very simple layman language that, okay, this is the functionality which was not authorized to be done by user A, but user A is able to do this just because there is a flaw in design, the way in which you've designed our system. You don't necessarily you need to tell them that you are really exploiting XML structure by putting so many payloads, but you could just simply demonstrate that these are the functionality which is getting used.
Okay, very interesting. I think it's super useful, an actionable takeaway to how you can transform, acronym so much in cybersecurity into like the business impact, which a lot of people struggle with, especially if you come, from a very technical background and you transition more and more into leadership. You have to learn the way to communicate, and the communication, is getting like so important. Like, what was how did you feel when you transition, from pen testing into more like product security leadership?
It involves a lot of mindset shift, a shift in skill and influence. I always thought that moving sideways in your career opens more doors than just waiting to move up. So always seek feedback when you can, take it constructively, work on them, and don't just take efforts, take systematic efforts. So if I give you example on what is difference between efforts and systematic efforts, efforts is when you say you'll go and run 10 kilometers today. But systematic effort is when you say you'll go run 10 kilometers in less than 50 minutes today. So that means you have a defined goal and you're taking an effort which is going to give you a defined outcome. So similar thing in the story here, when you are moving from technical side of the house, strategic side of the house, I think while you are working on improving your skill set, it's also, as I was mentioning, it's also a mindset shift, how you could work on your skills and the feedback loop and your the right set of mentors that you have that help guide you through the journey.
How would you recommend someone to find their mentors or the right set of mentors?
Always try and find, and whenever you work in organization, right, you always have somebody to look up to. You always, you have endless number of leaders, but you always look up to some leader who you feel connected with, who you feel that has traveled the path that you are traveling right now, who somewhat understands where you're coming from. You like that leadership style, right? There is no right or wrong leadership style. It's just that the leadership style that works for you. So identify that person, whether you want to walk the similar path that they have walked. Do they understand where you're coming from? Do you like their leadership style? And that would be the right mentor for you. There is no right or wrong answer, by the way, to find a mentor. It's just that what works best in that situation.
And how do you develop, your own leadership style? Do you take it, from the person you aspire, or do you actually try to figure out something yourself?
I think your leadership style should be your leadership style. It should not be something which you've taken from somebody. And as it's like a recipe, right? When you cook, you bring your own touch. Similarly, I think with leadership style, when you practice it, you bring your own touch. And when you be yourself while being a leader, it brings a lot of authenticity. And while you're trying to pretending to be someone, you lose that factor of authenticity. Of course, you can learn from your mentors, etc., how you practice some of the skills. But I think being you is also important at the same time.
Sometimes in the cooking, some dishes are not always good, so sometimes it depends. You need some guidance to become a better chef, I would say. Yeah. How did your perspective actually change? Because you also work at Qualys, as I remember, right? Which are more on the vendor side, and now you work for an energy company, Baker Hughes. How did your perspective on AppSec and tooling change when you moved, from a vendor base to a practitioner?
I think both has their own perspective to look at the security, right? From prior, when you are into product which is giving security as a service, you're more into how can we detect more vulnerabilities. And when you come at enterprise side, the question you ask to yourself is which vulnerabilities matter most to our business. It's not finding more, it's just finding a right balance. On the other hand, when you're here, you're trying to build something in a scalable manner, which is kind of fitting in larger customer base. While if you are in enterprise, you try and embed security into your SDLC through CI/CD, etc. Because here security is a product, and in enterprise, security is not product, but it's just a business enabler. So it's just the perspective change when you go from here to there.
Yeah, I think it should be something like quite a big shift. Well, depending on what you do, because there are some security companies and vendor companies that still have like a security development team in house that do not necessarily apply to product, but they also have to secure their products. On the top of that, that is at least what I've seen with some companies we worked with on my side, and it's always a little bit of a game between the vendor space and the practitioner space, like a little dance. Do you feel like right now, since you worked on the other side, you're more willing also to provide feedback on what can products do better for you to become a business enabler on your side?
I think feedback loops are extremely important that enables overall space improvement, right? For example, when you're seeing something and when you give that feedback loop to the solution provider, they go back and implement those, and then you eventually enhance overall space. So if you see DAST, right, traditionally we're just testing PHP, ASPX kind of a product applications, and they were all simple web apps. You click on them and they were testing it. But as and when the business side of the story enhanced, they really there were feedback loops that told them that no, okay, we are going to now develop SPAs, we are going to develop progressive apps, etc. And they took those feedbacks, and overall the security space together evolved. So I think these feedback loops are important.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you on that case, because sometimes when you're not there day to day, you don't know what's the most important, what you should focus on, and then you're actually working on, you feel like the problem, you feel the pain, and the exchanges of the key pains, the key testing, even from user experience point of view. Like I hear a lot, on Jira workflows, and that being a huge pain as well from vendor side, to connect different fields, etc. Yeah, that's something that we can work all together, to improve. And I also saw like you are very heavily involved in the community, supporting the InfosecGirls, getting involved in the OWASP Pune chapter as well. What do you feel like the biases that persist, the challenges that women in the product security?
I think one consistent challenge that I've seen is underrepresentation and visibility. So women are still significantly underrepresented in AppSec role, especially in leadership, offensive security, right? And this eventually leads to fewer role models, fewer mentors, and fewer sponsors for women. I think that is the one problem that I could think of.
How would you recommend someone to deal with jealousy?
Overall mindset development is we all need to work on irrespective of the gender, and when overall mindset improves, you have that support, and when you really invest in that leadership development irrespective of the gender, you go towards more better workplace.
Okay, and I also like on this new season, I have one question towards like the end that it's a new topic, like to introduce. What is your least favorite security buzzword and why?
Least favorite. People
Yeah.
have been asking me about favorite, and this question is reversed. Okay, so I think least favorite security buzzword that is coming up in my mind right now is zero trust. Not because the concept in itself is flawed. It's quite sound concept, right? Because it's overused and underexplained. Many vendors use zero trust on the products without really aligning to the principles. So if you see, zero trust is not product or tool that you go and purchase, right? It's just a strategy and mindset to never trust and always verify. So I think it becomes kind of a checkbox item when you are using that zero in day-to-day life. But what I could think is, if we replace with more grounded concepts like continuous verification or context aware access, it might be more actionable, because it's just a mindset and strategy. It's not a tool that you go buy and purchase.
Yeah, you should be more flexible in the mindset as well, because zero trust is literally aligned with security is a business of no, and it's everything is everything is a no, and sometimes you can't create a business relationships on that.
And if you look at the concept, right, that's applicable across, and that was always applicable. It's not just a new terminology that has spun up. It's just the new mindset that we are all shifting towards.
Okay. Well, we'll see how it will evolve in the upcoming year. Everything changes so fast in security, and the buzzwords we're talking about, at least I can see a year ago versus now have completely it's changed a lot, the key topics. For sure. And there is one question I also always ask, if there would be one book that you could recommend for someone who's just starting in security, for them to learn, or maybe even like learn about pen testing, since it's your field of expertise. What would it be?
A recent one, which I'm reading right now, I'm reading this book called Security Engineering.
Mhm.
It's a classic book which goes beyond AppSec, and it goes into psychology, economics, and real world systems behind security.
Mhm.
So it is a good blend of giving you a strategic breadth while still being technically rich. So I love that book, by the way.
Okay, well, it's good to hear. I'll put that in the comments For sure, and especially it's nice to see that you're actually like reading and can maybe, yeah, if someone wants to discuss it with you on LinkedIn or somewhere you can exchange, like start a book club, exchange the ideas. Well, thank you so much, Jyoti, for coming on the podcast. It was a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you so much for sharing your experience and especially some actionable takeaways, which is always nice. I think maybe I'll create an article around it and share it with you, helping others to translate complex also acronyms into a business-driven language. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Alexandra, for having me. It was nice talking to you.